Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in another of my wonderful interviews. Are you somebody who has been harassed by the police? You may have seen recently I've been putting out a few videos of people who have been harassed by the British police force. You would think that the British police force were an all nice, kind, gentle people on the side of us, the people. But it does turn out that they have a different agenda. Certainly the same with the government and the way that we're being used as a cash cow. Well, the guest today, Donnalee, is a full-time freedom fighter who has been at the wrong end of the British police, and she joins me now. Hello, Donnalee.
Hi there, Richard.
It's
Hi.
lovely to have you on the show. I'm sorry to hear that yet again you are somebody who's been in a no victim crime, which is so you haven't gone out and done a bank job. You haven't put on your
No,
stockings on your head with a
no,
sawn-off shotgun or anything like that.
not at all. No, if I'd done a bank job and had the money, I'd be in the Caribbean by now. So no, it's definitely not no victim crime.
No, and this is what's happening up and down the land a lot of at the moment, more than at any other time I can think of. The amount of entrapment that's going on with the cameras on the gantries on motorways, on the ULEZ, and I'm a victim myself of
Yeah.
the clean air zone, apparently, that I had no idea I was driving into, couldn't see the sign, couldn't see any tariffs that I was supposed to pay. And then the next thing I know is bailiffs are at the door saying, we want your van. So I'm absolutely on you there. And this, as I say, is prevalent at the moment. A lot of people are falling foul to it. You have a story about what's happened to you that's got you into doing something about it. Would
Yeah.
you like to share that with us?
Yeah. Well, my story began when at the start of COVID and at the end of the lockdown, the lockup. I went to the first protest in Hyde Park, where I was arrested by the police there for being in more than a group of two, and was taken to Holborn Police Station, processed, and kept in a cell until 2 o'clock in the morning. And came home under what was called a restrictive investigation, which I had no idea what a restrictive investigation entailed.
No, I
Come,
wouldn't.
come from a policing family, never had heard of it before. Um, but I heard no more until around about the July 2021. Um, Coincidentally, the day that I was arrested in Hyde Park was the day that Boris was having his taxpayers funded party.
Oh, nice. I'm
Nice.
glad we all contributed to
Yes,
that.
yes. Unfortunately, I was going to attend, but I was banged up in Holborn Police Station, so I
Oh,
couldn't
it's a bit
make it.
difficult, isn't it?
Sorry, Boris. So I'd completely forgotten about it, and then somebody contacted me on Facebook to say that, um, hope your court case goes well. And I'm like, what court case?
Yeah, hello.
And they sent me a snippet from the Daily Mail Online, which listed all 23 people that have been arrested. Not just the fact that, Donnalee's been arrested, Donnalee's postal address, my street address, and more of upsettingly, my age. So, of course, now all the population now realise that I'm geriatric. So it had my age, my postal address, and all my details. Um, so I was quite incensed by that. Less protection than a paedophile, probably. So I started then to research into common law and my rights, and I got very interested in that because it opened up a whole new learning to me. Um,
So you hadn't done any of this sort of stuff before then,
no,
the common law. You were just sort of doing your duty as a member of society
no.
of protesting against something which was unlawful.
Yeah, no, I was prior to COVID. I spent most of my time doing ballroom Latin dancing, so I was definitely more jive than jail. But
Yeah.
that all changed,
Yes.
after the incident in Holborn, and I started to become, educate myself a little bit about what I could. So in the October, I then get a phone call from the local constabulary in Milton Keynes saying that there's an allegation by somebody in the town where my business was run, to say that I'd assaulted somebody in the shop next door to mine. So I'm like, really? That's news to me. Yeah, we've got video evidence and witness statements saying that you assaulted somebody in the shop next door and want you to come in for a voluntary interview. So I said, well, if you've got evidence that I've assaulted somebody, why are you not coming around here to arrest me?
Mm.
So as luck would have it, I checked back on my Google history, and I actually hadn't, the day that this alleged attack had happened, I was nowhere in the area. Aside from the fact that it would have been out of character anyway, but I mean, I had evidence that I wasn't there, so I put that one to bed. But someone I connected with, who I started to talk to about common law, was organising a peaceful gathering up in Sheffield, and she asked me if I would like to attend and talk about common law. So I went up to Sheffield with my two dogs, and I joined the assembly up there, and I spoke on the microphone. And in the area where this was being held, there were lots of police on the perimeter. And as soon as I'd done my piece and spoken about the law, I went down, mingled with the crowd. This was all being videoed by a local videographer. And the police sergeant came over to me and tried to do the 3 E's, which is engage, educate, encourage, and enforce about the COVID regulations. So I argued my points with him that I wasn't interested in learning about COVID stuff, and maybe I had something better to do. And it's all videoed. It was actually on YouTube. It was the first arrest in Sheffield. So as we left that gathering, I know I'd upset a few of the constables there because I refused to give my details. And as the crowd were going off in their separate directions, the sergeant that had been speaking to me and a junior police officer came along and said to me that they wanted me to give them my name. So I stood on Rice versus Donnalee 1967, which is the statutory case law, which states you don't have to give your details. And so while I'm having this discussion with them, I'm just going to exercise my unalienable right to silence. They prized my dog's lead out of my hands and handed it to a person in the crowd, and took me down to the local police station where I sat for 48 hours.
Gosh. So you had no, I mean, your dog was given to just a random stranger, and you had no idea what had happened to it, and then your two dogs, and then you're just taken down, arrested, presumably.
Arrested. So at the end of the arrest, they took me to them because it was on a Saturday, so I had to wait until the magistrate's court was open on the Monday. So I went to the magistrate's court. I knew a little bit of, the fact that you're actually negotiating a contract with them because it's a commercial place. So when the judge spoke to me and she said, well, we'll have you back for a hearing, but we're going to offer you bail, we're going to give you bail conditions. I said, well, thanks ever so much for that offer, but I can't accept it because I don't want to be at home at 9 o'clock at night. I might want to go out with my friends. So she said, okay, no bail conditions, and set a hearing date. So I went back up to Sheffield for the hearing, and this time I'd learned a little bit more. So I'm sitting in the vestibule with a couple of people who'd come up to support me, and the judge, the usher called me in. Is Miss Donnalee Andrews in the courtroom? So I thought I was smart, and I'm waving my birth certificate at her and going, yeah, she's here. So they said, all right, well, they called the name 3 times, and of course I'm waving the birth certificate at them, the person that they're actually calling into the court, which was a bit naive of me, because really what I should have done was get into the courtroom and then start to have that discussion with them, not with the usher. So they said, oh, well, if she's not in the courtroom, we'll mark her down as absent. So marked it down as absent. I walked out of the court, got arrested for non-appearance at court, and went back into the police cells.
On the same day?
On the same day, all witnessed. So they let me out again, took me up to the magistrates again, and they set a hearing in Doncaster, which I didn't even bother going to. By this time, I was feeling a bit, it was irritating me. So I went home and I drove from Sheffield down to where I was living in Northampton. Got home, took my shoes off, made a coffee, sat down, and there's a knock at the door. And it's a police officer. So I'm like, hello, how can I help you? I didn't open the door. I spoke to them through the kitchen window. And she said, well, I was driving behind you down the M1, and I thought you were driving, swerving all over the road. I said, hang on a minute. I said, I didn't see a police car behind me. So she said, I was off duty. I said, so you've gone, I've only been home a little while. So I said to her, you've been following me off duty. You've gone into work, got into your uniform, checked the police computer, and my car wasn't even registered to that address, so they'd done a bit of their
Mm.
homework. I said, and you're standing on my land, telling me what you saw, which you've got no evidence for. So the long
Yeah,
and
all
short,
hearsay.
well, yeah. So literally, I got her to leave me alone that day. So I had another visit from the police where I'd been to a rally in Aylesbury. They drove from Aylesbury to Northampton on a Sunday afternoon, tried the same thing again. I said to them I wasn't going to contract with I didn't need the services of their private corporation, and I wasn't going to give them my details for them to raise me an invoice. So I discharged them again that on that occasion. Then we started to get visits in my business premises by the local environmental health officer and the police. I think it might have had something to do with the fact that we were a hub for the light paper. So we used to take in large quantities of the light, and the distributors used to come and pick them up from us. And my staff were trained to cut the articles out of the light paper and stick them on the pane glass windows of the shops, so that anyone wanted to find out the real facts about COVID was more than welcome to do so. But the police started coming in saying that they were going to close us down. So I had to do a training course with my staff, which was, they'd done customer services and product training. So we started training them on how to discharge the police after having checked their warrant cards. I wanted so I'd had that kind of like little bit of harassment from the police. But as it happens, my son is actually in the CID in London. He
Oh,
joined
right.
the CID in 2019, and we'd had a bit of a family dispute over a holiday, and I hadn't spoken to him. So I phoned him in early 2022 just because there were lots of protests going on. I was seeing some stuff going on in the London area that I was thinking, I hope he's okay. So I gave him a call, and he said to me, "What are you doing phoning me?" I said to him, "I just wanted to make sure you're all right, Matthew." And he said to me, "Well, now you rung me, I've got to fill in a report." Why? And he said, "Well, you're a domestic terrorist." And I said, "I'm a terrorist. It wasn't me that used to leave the Lego lying around for people to tread on." But this is what he's clearly been advised. And I know that's not come from my son, because if my son wanted to say something about me which was insulting, he'd find something, much more personal than I'm a domestic terrorist. So to me, that indicates that that's what I've been labelled as. It's ridiculous.
And past that, so they obviously found out that you've got a son in the police force.
Well, I'm assuming so. I mean, they know everything about us, don't they? So it's not difficult
Mm.
to find out. But or he also, because my daughter was she'd got a graduate degree with the Department of Science and Technology, an engineering degree, and during COVID, she actually gave up working for them. She said she didn't like it, but before she handed her notice in there, she was waiting to do developed vetting, which is where they check into the background of the person to make sure that they are security cleared.
Mm.
And one of the other things that Matthew said to me on the phone was, "And it was because of you that Molly never got her developed vetting," which is complete rubbish. I mean, she didn't end up staying
No,
at that organisation. But
it sounds incredibly hurtful for a son to say that. I'm sure that when you gave birth to him, however many years ago, you didn't think for one moment he'd be on the phone telling you that his own mother is a domestic terrorist.
well, I mean, I saw interviews around the time with Kate Shemarani. I think her son sort of made some comments about her at the time, and kids are kids. If they're going to lash out, I know,
The nearest and dearest are the easiest to a target, aren't
yeah,
they?
and we've had a fraught relationship, my son and I, but I mean, I don't think he could find anything about his relationship with me which would suggest that I'm a danger to society.
And was he actually serious that he had to write a report that you'd rung in?
Well, I assume so. I don't think I
I
raised
mean,
him to
that's,
be a liar.
it's a bit, but yeah, well, this is it. So where are you now then in terms of all of this with all the things that have been going on, the court case that you suddenly discovered that you had no idea about, and all
Um,
these harassments from the police?
well, there was during this time, my car was registered to a different address, and I was getting a couple of speeding fines and stuff. And at that stage of my journey, I just disregarded them. I should have like sent in rebuttals or conditional acceptances. But at that stage of my journey, I didn't really want to put the energy into it. I thought I haven't done it. I haven't done a crime. So I didn't fill in the forms to give them the details of whoever the driver might have been, whether it was me or somebody else. So how that's manifested itself now is that I've got, I believe, according to them, I've got about 30 endorsements on my license. Although I don't need a license because I'm a traveller in a private conveyance, I'm not a driver in a vehicle, according to the definitions of law. And I've been pulled over in my car on 3 separate occasions. Once a police pulled me over on the M1 to say that they thought I was using a handheld device. There's no evidence of that. Certainly no victim. So it's one of these instances where corpus delicti, there is no victim, there is no crime. I was pulled over again in June last year when I was in a dark side street. I'd just driven to my brother's, and as I pulled over, an unmarked police car put its blues on behind me as I got out of the vehicle, and had said that they had been following me for 10 miles and thought I was drunk. And I said, well, I don't drink, very rarely do I drink. And if you think I'm drunk, why don't you get a breathalyzer out and breathalyze me? So they said, well, we haven't got a breathalyzer in the car. So they can make an allegation like that.
But they can't take the evidence.
Can't take the evidence. So they looked on the police computer and decided that because of the apparent number of endorsements that I've got on my license, they filled in a slip for my car and they put my full name on it, which is the full name of the birth certificate. And I said, well, that's not me. I'm not accepting that piece of paper. That's not me. And I showed them what I had, which was an identification card, a sovereign identification card that doesn't give me it just gives my Christ forgiven calling on it and my born day. So that was that arrest. And apparently there was a summons.
So they arrested you on the strength of that?
But they didn't arrest me. I walked off, but they did take the car and impound it. And I got the car out the following day, or my very tolerant ex-husband got the car out the next day.
And did you have to pay for that?
Yeah. So what I wasn't aware of was I moved home, but there was a summons issued for me to go to court in October last year, which I didn't attend the court hearing. So fast forward, there was another incident of police harassment during this time, which was about my dogs this time. So I took my dogs for a walk locally, and a strange little thing. So they do the same thing on their walk every time we go out anywhere. So they run into this little side street, and then they run back into the meadow where we walk. So this day they'd run out into the side street and they didn't come back, and I could hear a commotion. So I ran into the side street, and it turns out that they've chased a cat. And unfortunately, sadly, the cat has got scared and nervous, and it looks as if one of the dogs has caught the cat. So all the neighbours had heard the commotion as well, and they came out. So by the time I got to the dogs and contained them, the neighbours were baying for my blood and the dog's blood and complaining, your dogs have bit this cat. So I did what I thought was responsible, which was take the cat down to the local vet, give the neighbours my phone number and address, looked after the the cat, paid the vet's bill, told the vet to get hold of the owner, told them to give them my telephone details, and went back to the neighbours when I left the cat down there to say, give them an update. So a day later, at home, a PCS, a police community support officer, turns up at my door and says, I'm here to talk about your naughty dogs. So I'm like, have you ever actually watched Tom and Jerry? Because the cat chases the mouse, the dog chases the cat. And
so your dogs are great big, violent, elephant-sized nasty things, are they?
No, in fact, I've brought a picture of my Fanny to show you. That's my dangerous dog.
Oh gosh, look at that.
That's
Yeah.
her.
Hold it in front of your face. Um, there we go. Look at that.
That is my dangerous dog. So the police community support officer came out, and then 2 days later, we had a visit from two police constables and six residents. And if that wasn't bad enough, a week later, there was a visit from the inspector of police from Northamptonshire and another officer who said that they were considering seizing my dogs because they were dangerous.
Clearly, there's not a lot of crime that goes on, actual, real, genuine, crime that goes on in your area that the police have got all this time to dedicate to a cat being slightly nerved by some little dogs. I mean, it's extraordinary.
Yeah, well, in the town where my business operated from, we had a spate of there were 16 burglaries over 14 nights in December 2018, I believe it was. No, no police.
No, well, clearly they're
Chasing
extremely
dogs.
busy chasing dog chasing cats. It's an outrage. So you've had all this hassle. Now, I'm just going to ask you. I mean, let me play the devil's advocate for one moment in this. Donnalee, why can't you just be a very good citizen and just do as you're told and stay in line and not cause any hassle?
Well, because I came into this world with my freedom. And it's probably
Exactly.
the only thing that I'm going to be taking out with me, actually. Klaus Schwab gets his way. And,
He won't. He won't. That's all over. That's
and
he's not going to get it.
it's important to me when there is, um, I feel a real sense of injustice
Mm,
where you've got real crime going on, which isn't being investigated properly. And these ridiculous situations, which we both know is literally a ticket to print money. It's a
yes.
money printing machine. And when they're putting more energy into those kind of crimes where nobody has been injured, um, these the speeding tickets. I mean, other European countries. I'm not trying to advocate that people should be driving at all kinds of ridiculous speeds or doing ridiculous things in areas, but where the cameras are, let's face it, if you've got a speed camera and you want to go through the speed camera and behave yourself, as soon as you've gone past that speed camera, you can go at 80 as long as you're not caught.
Mm,
That's one point. In European countries, if you commit a crime, if you do harm, loss, or injury to somebody when you've been speeding, that's reflected in the sentence that you will get. So what we have here with these no victim crimes that are just money generating ways for the police force, for the courts. I just feel that there's a better use of police resources.
Can you just tell me what's it like sitting on a Friday night until Monday morning in a police cell after that situation that you explained at the beginning? I mean, you said you just went through it. You're processed and you have to wait. But just explain what's that like, because many people haven't been into a police. I've not been processed by the police. I'm expecting it any day, but for my outrageous thoughts, just by having a YouTube channel these days. But what is it like for you're on your own? And you said earlier you didn't know whether they'd even rung to let other people know that you're
Yeah,
there.
exactly. And in fact, I'm involved in a project at the moment, which I'm hoping will be ready in about a week or 10 days' time, which is a service for people who are detained, who get that one phone call under Code C of PACE, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act of 1984, which is going to be a phone line for people, to a 24-hour manned phone line. So I'm hoping to launch that in about 7 to 10 days' time. But
Wow.
one of the concerns is, did they ring anyone? Does anyone know that I'm here? Is anyone going to be there when I get out if I have to go to magistrates court?
And were you on your own when they lock you up in the police cell? Are you just purely on your own, or with other potential?
No, you're on your own in a cell. It looks like a cubicle, a public toilet cubicle. It's very clinical, not overly comfortable. They are accommodating, like I get cold quite easily, so they gave me extra blankets. And I was very lucky because they I just asked them to give, you can ask for writing materials, they'll sometimes give you that. Um, and I asked for a copy of the Bible, so I sat and read for a couple of days, which calmed my nerves.
Mm.
That was really important. It calmed my nerves. But you're in a situation where some of the people that are being taken into the cells next to you are very distressed or aggressive, and the police know how to deal with those. They don't know how to deal with people who can calm their own nerves and just sit quietly, which is what I did. But when you're in there, and the last time I was in, because I was arrested on the side of the road on the M4 on the 15th of December for driving without a license or driving whilst disqualified because of all of these endorsements, which I'm challenging now, because we know that they were issued in private commercial courts. So when you're there for 60 hours, it is a case, and that I was in there for 60 hours this time, it is a case of managing your own stress levels, because the minute you start to allow that stress to get to you, you know, and you're listening to other people banging on doors and screaming and shouting at the police, it isn't the most pleasant experience. You have to really be able to manage your nerves.
Mm. I mean, it does sound. I mean, it just sounds awful, especially if you know you've got things, if you've got children, or there's things that you needed to attend to, or you're going and you're trying not to let people down for whatever reason, or you've got, you know, all of that, and suddenly there you are for 60 hours, and you don't know if anybody else knows where you are.
Well, that's
And
what this phone line's going to do. It's going to be a one phone call with a very, very memorable number where people can call in, and we will securely hold 20 of their details. So say, for instance, you were arrested, you make that one phone call to this phone line, the phone line then advise 20 of your contacts, and hopefully also will organise for independent volunteer witnesses to be at the magistrates' courts where you go, so that they can look for any procedural impropriety during the hearing if they decide to process you through the magistrates' court. So I'm hoping, we're working very hard on that, and I'm hoping that's going to be ready in the next week or two.
well, I mean, and that sounds brilliant. It's just a sad state of affairs that one has to be, you know, ordinary people are having to work lawfully to ensure that the body that is there supposedly to work for us is doing such dreadful and fraudulent, unlawful deeds, which is
Exactly.
terrible.
Exactly. I had a friend who was arrested, and she phoned me to help her discuss with the police the incident. She was arrested in a town near Milton Keynes. She was the passenger, not the driver of the car that they stopped, and she was convicted of driving without insurance.
She was the passenger.
Yeah, and she was taken to the police station and manually handled by 8 police constables. And she's got images of her, you know, she's bruised.
As far as I mean, I have read the highway code, and I have done. I did pass my test, and I don't remember at any one time where the passenger was actually allowed to drive the vehicle or expected to be driving. Was there nobody in the driving
Oh,
seat?
there was someone driving the vehicle, and she also got she was also arrested. But that was the charge they brought against my friend who was the passenger,
Who was the
and she's
passenger for
still
driving
dealing
a
with that.
vehicle?
Still dealing with it. It's absolutely despicable.
I mean, and it sounds as if the courts then must be in on it, because if you're sitting there as the judge going, okay, this is the passenger, and you're doing her for excuse me, where's common sense?
Of course, the courts are in on it. The courts are in on it when it's council tax challenges. These are buildings that you're taken into where, unless you're somebody who's done some homework, you believe you're there to face a criminal prosecution in a private civil court. So when you walk into those areas, you have that has all the furniture of all the things that, you know, when you're my age and you've grown up watching Crown Court or Judge
Oh God, I
Judy,
remember Crown Court.
showing your age now. So,
I know.
so you're kind of like in that position where it's intimidating. It's got all the furniture of a criminal a criminal procedure.
Mm.
And this is the other project that uh, I really feel strongly about. Um, there are two ways that we can look at this. Within our own jurisdiction, we can seek a public inquiry. We can organise, and in fact, there's a lady, very well-known lady within the Truth Movement, who is trying to organise a public inquiry at the moment for these no victim crimes, where, I mean a proper public inquiry, not the kind that they do in Parliament, where
No, no, not the fudge.
not the fudge up whitewashed issues.
That's cost an absolute fortune of the taxpayer.
Again, yes, but they're
Yeah.
very cheap to run if they're done properly and they're done publicly. So she's looking at maybe taking it into our jurisdiction and doing a public inquiry on no victim crimes. I, on the other hand, am very motivated at the moment to seek judicial review about the no victim crimes. And I believe that we meet the 8 tests to request a judicial review because the difference between, like, if you have a hearing and you take it for an appeal, you can change the outcome for that individual case. But what a judicial review will do is to decide whether the delegated or prerogative powers of the public bodies are operating within the powers that they're given, or whether they're operating ultra vires. And I believe that
An ultra vires means
outside of their delegated and prerogative powers, which
yes.
is what I believe that they are. Now, I think that my situation is, but I also believe that anyone else who's been affected by no victim crime is also in that same position. And
well, I would certainly argue that things like the council tax, which I know you spoke about later with the bulk hearings in which thousands of people are being supposedly having the mind of the judge applied to in 20 seconds or whatever, to sign a thing saying, yep, there are 7,000 people, you're all got a liability order. That no way can that be a proper judicial process to each individual.
That's one of the tests. Is it justicable, I think, is one of the tests. And I believe that in the no victim crime situation and the council tax, that both could be considered areas for judicial review. But obviously my hobby horse is the, because what they're trying to do is they are trying to enforce on me. I've taken a driving test and I've shown that I'm competent to operate that piece of machinery, but they're forcing on me a commercial driver's license, even though I'm not operating in commerce. I'm a private individual, and I've checked it out because one of the other tests of judicial review is if our domestic court process or public body of the courts is trying to do something which is kind of against the higher legislation or powers. For instance, in 1948, the United Kingdom signed the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. And to my mind, having read through the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, what they've done to me contravenes Articles 1, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.1, 11.2, 12, 13, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21.1, 21.3, 23 and 26.2. So
quite a lot.
That's a reason for potentially judicial review in no victim.
I mean, you need a trial by jury, don't you?
That's another option. But I think that it would be a big educational piece for anyone that maybe isn't awake to the corruption that's going on, to hear that the government is being challenged by a judicial review. So I think it might. I'm speaking at the moment. I spoke to a gentleman who's done a couple of judicial reviews. In the number of them that have been raised with the government dropped since 2013, which is also correlates with the time that the government changed the funding for legal aid. Surprisingly, not. He thinks that we may be able to get legal aid for a judicial review into this, and if not, we'll find another way.
Well, all these judges and these police and the clerk of the court and all of them are public trustees after all.
Yeah.
And, in that jurisdiction, they are operating outside of their stuff, assuming one rebuts all of the presumptions. Tell me about your sovereign spirit idea, because you've been working behind the scenes as a result of all this harassment that you've had to try and help others, of course.
Yeah. I'm no expert in many areas. I mean, I've got a broad brush of knowledge, but I am very conscious of a lot of people who are expert in certain areas,
Hmm.
and they're working individually. And if you're new to this and you need some assistance, you may not know where to go to. And then there's a lot of people that can offer help, whatever that might be. It could be that you could do a bit of admin. It could be that you're a videographer, or it could be that you've got some experience in writing documents to rebut things. And there's
Let
also,
me I'm just going to insert here, when you say help, not necessarily, and maybe people want to avoid, it's not for me to say, solicitors who are also members of the private bar guild, which are operating in many times actually against the clients who are paying them.
yeah, absolutely.
And so when you say that there are other people who can help, particularly in lawful stuff, there's a lot of people, people immediately think, oh, I need to go to a solicitor and spend an absolute fortune and find it was no help whatsoever.
Yeah,
Now, I'm not saying that all solicitors are bad or wrong or anything, but in a lot of these areas, they're not necessarily able to help you because they don't understand lawful
don't.
jurisdictions.
They don't.
Yeah.
I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, which is why I've actually got a warrant out for my arrest at the moment, because after this arrest in December, I went to a court hearing in St Albans Magistrates Court on the 12th of January, along with 3 witnesses. And again, they tried to get me to operate in commerce. I brought the birth certificate with me into the courtroom. I was stood there, the living, breathing woman, and the judges walked out of the court because they couldn't exercise either subject matter or personal matter jurisdiction over me.
To
And
recruit themselves.
they walked out, and so the Crown prosecutor, um, who is actually committing a couple of crimes in by the barratry, the personage, the legal entrapment, and trying to fraudulently make me think I'm in a criminal proceedings, even though it's a civil matter, stated in front of my witnesses, oh, well, if Donnalee Andrews isn't in the courtroom, we'll put a warrant out for her arrest. And he's actually saying it to me. He's actually stating it to my face. And I'm like, are you deluded? You're having a conversation with me. What am I, some form of apparition? So I left the courtroom, and I've currently got a warrant out. So, yeah, so people, if they're having problems, will, if, oh, I've got a legal issue, who do I go to? Citizens Advice, which we don't have an alternative, which I think Sovereign Spirits is kind of looking to be something like that. Or you go to a solicitor, and a solicitor, 150 quid for a letter, and it will all be subject to the SRA. And if it goes into deeper matters, will then instruct a barrister who has joined the private bar guild
Yeah.
after they've done their tutoring, which we all know now is called. I don't know if you're aware, but they have devil masters. The
Devil Masters.
That's what they have. The handbook that barristers receive is called the Devil in Handbook, and the tutor that they get assigned to when they go into the bar guild is called a devil master.
Well, they're telling you again in plain sight, aren't they?
Right, plain sight. But yeah, people will go to a solicitor to get the assistance that they need. They'll pay the money. But what we want to do is we want to encourage people to come and get lawful advice.
Yes.
And so I hope that Sovereign Spirits will be a way for people to have like a bit like a citizen's advice. They come to us, this is the issue, where can I go? And we field them over in this direction or to a different type of expert. So if anyone's watching this and you're currently in a situation where you need assistance or you would like to give assistance, then if you email the email address that I've given you, what I'm immediately going to do is send out a secure form for you to give me a little bit of background of I'm a helper or I need help, and the ones that need help, I'm hoping that I'll be able to find some people who are also in this situation where they've been affected by no victim crime.
So effectively, you're calling out for people who've got the knowledge, and
Yeah,
there's a lot of people out there, a growing,
yeah,
fortunately, a growing number of people who, like you, are mugging up and learning about common law. They're learning about sovereignty. They're learning about jurisdiction. They're learning how to deal with what's lawful and what's legal, and the difference between legalese and common
yeah,
sense and common law and all of that, and so that they can get in touch with you and say, look, we can help,
yeah.
which is great. And then also those people who are like the lady who I had on the other day, who had her truck removed for a parking
Oh,
fine.
she was absolutely amazing. I mean, she for a young girl, she was articulate. She was really brave. Um, Fantastic, very inspirational. And there'll be somebody out there that's watching this who might not have those skills to be full on with a bailiff or a police constable as she was, but they might have a few hours where they could potentially draw up some documents or post out some documents, or it might be that somebody can do a bit of video editing so that we can get some educational material. But I
Mm,
really think now the time has come where we need to kind of lay down, not lose our individuality or our sovereignty, but lay down some of the egos that get in the way of people working together,
yes.
and for us to try to collaborate to get the information out there, because it's only through the numbers that we're going to we need to try to get more momentum behind those of us who are pushing harder. And so I think we have to come together.
Absolutely, and we've seen this on the food front, where grassroots organisations and people are getting together to grow food, and we've seen the farmers now beginning to sort of mobilise and push back, and it is in the end we're beginning to realise that actually all of this is down to us, the people, to get mobilised, to get together, to realise that it's grassroots up and pushing back against the
Yeah,
fraudulent organisations and so-called authority, those people that are clinging on to their authority, and say, actually, firstly, you're acting criminally, you're acting illegally by your own rules. I mean, that's half of the extraordinary thing, is their rules are all codified, and you can point to them and say, well, you haven't even got the proper writ. You haven't got a magistrate's court order. It's not signed in wet ink. All the things you're supposed to have, and you're pretending, like with the young lady Lucy that I showed, where they were just showing something on a phone, which could
yeah.
easily be manipulated and changed. And how do you know? You can't authenticate that at all.
And as soon as they find something that we think is a loophole, they close it down by bringing out another piece of legislation. I mean, I read with Lucy's interview yesterday, one of the comments in your channel was somebody had spoken about the Electronic Communications Act of 2000. So I looked at it, and there were 6 clauses, I think, when I read through it, all describing when it's appropriate to use electronic communication, because they just bend the rules.
Yes.
I mean, it's whimsical. They will just do whatever they can to shut us down. But there are 623 members of parliament, and there's 68 million of us. And
Exactly.
I think we have to start to remember who we are, where the proper jurisdiction lies. It's not here. I don't advocate that anyone does harm, loss, or injury to another person, but what we have got now is beyond. We have got no justice. There is no justice in this world, I'm starting to believe. And there is no fairness. And I think that the time has come now for us to really use what we each individually have. And I think, you know, people kind of go, well, what can I do? But really, when you've got a jigsaw puzzle, one individual piece of the jigsaw puzzle is indeterminate. You can't see what the picture is, but we have got an opportunity if we work collaboratively to change the situation.
Absolutely. Do you have a website as yet?
No, but if there's a lovely free website designer, then I am putting together a couple of very basic websites at the moment, um, about another project to do with council tax and for this phone line. I'm working on those. But for Sovereign Spirits, I would really like to try to get a website together. But in the first instance, there's an email account that people can email into. I'm going to send them out a secure form which asks a couple of questions, which helps to organise what they need or
What
what
you're
they
doing,
can
yeah.
do. But yeah, I will be developing a website for Sovereign.
So if anyone's got those sort of skills and is watching and is absolutely on board with this and thinks, hang on, I've got a little bit of spare time, I can set up a secure
Yeah.
website, I know how to do it, I can do it nice and cheaply and effectively, then of course the email will be in the description, so you can check that out and get in touch with Donnalee and move this on, because I think we're all beginning to realise it's all down to us now. It's down to us to get together and do these things. And we've been a bit lazy. We've allowed the courts, the police, and all these things to sort of lose the authority that they once had, the proper authority. And now that sort of like the mafia is out there, and the
Absolutely.
ones with the biggest sticks seem to be the ones
Absolutely.
winning.
They've got a police force which covers the nation. Well, that's only got the energy behind it of the men and women that are working in it. And so we're the men and women. If we don't like what they're doing, let's do it ourselves. That's,
And Theresa May famously said the police are only there by consent. They police by consent. She said it. There's video
yeah.
of her saying it.
Well,
Well, if you don't consent,
actually, Penny Mordaunt said it last week as well. She said the same thing in Parliament last week. There was an Irish politician who was in the Palace of Westminster, who was discussing the incident of this volunteer police constable in London who tried to move a gospel singer, Harmony Music, who sings gospel music in Oxford Street. And there was Eastern European volunteer police constable who volunteer, and she told Harmony Gospel that she wasn't allowed to play gospel church music outside of a church. So
was it the same? It wasn't like an opposite church
it was, she was just singing gospel music
for her own church.
but no, just standard gospel
Oh, I
songs,
see. Yeah,
like
right. Okay.
Ed Sheeran sings his songs. She was just singing gospel songs, and this police lady said you're not allowed to sing church songs outside of church.
And she could point to the legislation that said that, presumably.
Well, she was challenged. Some of the people that were listening to this beautiful singer challenged what this woman had said,
Yeah.
and instead of giving them evidence or proving her claim.
Yes, it says here on the legislation, and it's been there since 1832. You can't. She couldn't. I mean, there's probably no legislation whatsoever
No.
to say you can't do
And
that.
in fact, what she did to end the discussion was she poked her tongue out at the singer.
And that was an appropriate police response, was
Well, the issue was that the volunteer police constable, unpaid, I mean, they're recruiting these people to volunteer and they're giving them a discount on the council tax. So anyone that's considering volunteering for the police force and getting a discount off your council tax, please don't do that. Please come and volunteer for a private police force that we'll set up where we'll teach you not to pay any of your council tax. But if you,
Unless we, of course, we infiltrate that en masse. All the lawful people become volunteer policemen and let people get away with murder.
Well, that's another
not literally, obviously.
That is another project that I'd very much like to get my teeth into. But the point that I'm trying to make is that while you're recruiting police constables on a voluntary basis, you're going to get people who, they've got no money, they're probably a little bit hard up.
Absolutely. Bit power mad.
Yeah, power mad. And they're enforcing non-legislation, non-rules.
And you can see why that's going on, because they're obviously asking the police to do immoral tasks. It's immoral with again, taking Lucy as an example. It's quite immoral for three police vehicles and three policemen at the minimum to just gang up and allow three brutish blokes to take her van and just watch on and say, sorry, love, you're a 5 foot nothing young, harmless individual. And we're, I mean, the police that came to mind when I was extremely ill, I wasn't going to kick off or anything, turned up within 2 minutes of the call. You can imagine that I'd pulled a gun on the bailiff guy and he'd rung help. Suddenly they were there. There was no crime going on in the town where I live, obviously, that day. And they've got all that. So it seems to me that if they're asking for volunteers, they're going to get those sort of people who are quite happy to do quite immoralistic duties.
Absolutely.
Just so they can get 50 quid off their council tax a month.
Absolutely.
I mean,
no, that's
it's despicable. Absolutely despicable.
There are photographs going around the internet at the moment where we've got people. I saw a picture the other day of a couple of newly recruited police officers. I looked at them and I really was shocked. They were like, they've taken away the height restriction. They looked like two 16-year-olds, and I was kind of thinking, well, next time I get arrested, I hope it's by these two, because they weren't. I'm not saying that they've got to be threatening, but they've got no presence at all. They've got no.
And training, what kind of training do they get? Because, I mean, they must be paid to be trained for however long. I mean, I don't know how long you train a volunteer policeman. Perhaps just give him a card and say they are.
How long for a volunteer, but I do know that my son went through a 16-week training course to be a detective.
16 weeks? That doesn't... I mean, a brain surgeon has to do a bit more. I mean, I know you're cutting people open and stuff, but a policeman, you would think there's a lot to learn. You've got to... I mean... They got to know what they can arrest people and what the law is, presumably. And most of the time, it seems the police have no idea what the law is, and the victims have a better idea of what's lawful and what's not.
But unfortunately, the police are also of the opinion that they've got some form of protection by the elites who are controlling them. But as we know, with many of these narcissistic individuals that are running these organisations, when they're done with the police, I mean, the police are probably, a lot of them are still holding on to their pensions. Well, let me tell you, there's no pension pot left. No. There won't be any pension pots left for you. You're as dispensable as the rest of us bottom feeders when the push will come to the shove.
Yes. No, absolutely. I mean, it's a nightmare. Donnalee, thank you for talking to us about the situation. If you want to get in touch, sovereignspirituk@gmail.com. I'll put the email into the description, but that is it. Do get in touch with Donnalee. She'd be lovely to hear from you, especially if you've got some web dev technology that you can assist with. But of course, if you've got any lawful knowledge and you can help people write notices and rebut things and all of that, then that would be great. And if you're currently undergoing something and you're a bit stressed, don't write to me, because I get a lot of people who, and I never know what to do with them. And so, yeah, put them Donnalee's way. Donnalee, it's been a privilege to talk to you. Thank you so much for sharing your case. Good luck in all that you do. Keep fighting the good fight. And I'm sorry to hear about more injustice from a service that we're all paying for that is not up to spec, and it's got to change. So there we go. I'll be back with more monologues and wonderful interviews. But in the meantime, thank you for watching. And from Donnalee and myself, till next time, goodbye.